Hello, everybody, and welcome. We are back for our third installment of the live reading of The Dark Castle by and we're going to be doing chapters 7 through 10 today. And I'm very happy to have my friend Dino helping me read this today.
Oh boy, I'm excited to be here, but she can read very well on her own. Don't be fooled. Yeah. Excitement levels are high.
What would you say?
Excitement levels, like, if you could see the roof of my house, my excitement levels are like in the trees above my house, or the clouds or something. Whatever is further above my house. I'm not sure if I have any trees taller than, but I am ready. I'm also ready for book 2, and it's finally almost January. No, it comes out in January sometime, people. Mark your calendars. Also, Happy New Year's Eve, since we're talking.
Happy New Year's Eve, yes. Yep, it comes out January 22nd, I think.
Okay, that was the date I was thinking, but I didn't want to say that and be like, I am very wrong, and I misinformed you.
You're all good.
Always better when it comes from the author themselves.
Yeah. Watch me be wrong.
Oops. Oh.
But I'll be doing a cover reveal very soon, which I'm very excited about. So
for book 2?
On book 2.
Ooh, exciting. Wait for that.
Yeah, it's turning out really, really good. I'm super excited about it. So
that makes me excited about it. If you think it's good, can't even. That means good things in the future.
Indeed. So we want to get started?
Sure. Chapter 7.
Chapter 7. You want to go first, Dino?
Sure. Chapter 7. Victor stumbled back in shock. His guess had been wrong. He turned his feet, ready to run. For decades, he had avoided imprisonment in Dead Man's Graveyard. He doubted that the Ancient Ones would find satisfaction with just his death and public execution. No, he knew if caught, he would be dragged through the streets, beaten and bruised. Then they would toss him into the horrid prison of Dead Man's Graveyard, locking him in and throwing away the key. Why had he allowed himself to be talked into taking the suicide mission? And why in Melody's bulging disc had he thought it would go so easily? Utter nonsense drove him to think so. But Weira had said that, had she not? Perhaps she sought to show him in this odd way. You are thinking like an idiot. Now you died. Let me show you. Now you died by your idiocy. Happy now, Victor Tomes. I do not hear you whining any longer. Victor wondered if she had planned this, sending him here to die. After all, Agrentians always had pride about how they thought little of death. They did not seek it, mind you, but they did not fear it. When the right time came, they greeted it as an old friend. What a bunch of loonies! Simply put, Victor did not share their sentiment. Before he could fly away, the woman reached out of her window, grabbed him by the hand, and pulled him in. Panic flashed into Victor's system, making him lose all sense as her hand tightened. Frankly, he did not feel in the mood to fight a woman, especially since she did not know any better. But for flipping Brosian Bean's sake, did she have to dig her nails in? No, he would not go down, not without a fight. So what if he socked the woman in the face? Why should he care? If you're going to side with the ancient ones, then take one for the team, lady. He posed himself to fight. He hoped to simply stun her and get away before any real damage must take place. Shh! Do not fight. I do not want to hurt you, sir, she whispered, her eyes wide with fright as she looked into the street in front of her house. Oh, do not worry. I will not get hurt. You should be more concerned about yourself. He flattened his free hand and smacked her on the cheek. Quite a good slap. He turned to flee, but she groaned and mumbled out, "For kindness! My message!" He jerked his head and looked at her. She had caught herself on the windowsill, leaning against it for support. She had said for kindness. The phrase only Argentins would use instead of please. For kindness was the most common replacement, but other variations employed as well. For friendship, or for mercy, or for peace, whatever suited the circumstance best. It enabled one to express the desire behind their request. Victor ran over to the windowsill. She held her cheek in one hand, bracing herself in the other. He could tell she held back tears, the skin under her hand already reddening. His face flushed. I... She waved him off with the hand that she had propped herself up with before. I would have done the same. I had to know for sure if this was not a nasty ancient one's trick. She smiled weakly, but still tried to be cheerful. I would say you passed the test. With flying colors, in truth. Flying because your hand flew. Colors because I wager a guess my cheek must be a few different shades of red at the moment. Her grin held mischief, eyes glittering with desperation. But for what exactly? Will you not come in? I have stew almost ready. I would love for you to join me, seeing as I gave you such an awful fright and all. But I will request that you enter through this window, not the front door. I do not want my neighbors getting the wrong impression or anything. She winked up at him from her place on the floor. Okay, I suppose so. Though in truth, I should be serving you after what I did. I do apologize. You had me so convinced you were going to cold me and call for your ancient one. She laughed. Ha! I have gotten quite good at making the truth disappear and the lies seem honest. It is not something that I am at all proud of, but I am sure that you are not proud of all that you have done for our cause. Like punching a pregnant woman or something of that matter. But do come in and mind my rosemary and daisies. They are the source of rare joy for me in this world, and I do not want you crushing them with your foul behind. Victor did not move, his mouth agape, his eyes wide within his paled face, somewhat sickened by the thought of accosting a woman with child. Come with haste, if you're going to do it. Closing his mouth, tears filled his eyes, and he opened his mouth to apologize. She cut him off before he had the chance. Shush! You did not know. Come in now, hurry, before you catch flies with your open mouth, and the ancient ones with your scarring. Come now, come. He came into the house then, through the window, one hand on the wall, the other on the window-sill. Throwing one leg over the sill, he steadied his foot on the floor before pulling the other leg through. He, of course, moved carefully to mind the fragile daisies. Once he stood inside, Mrs. Vertisky rose and closed the window behind him. She hurried about, setting her small wooden table with another bowl, napkin, and spoon. She also pulled out 2 cans. I save these for special occasions. And, well, I would consider this one. You consider getting punched in the face a special occasion? Victor teased as he stepped further into the house. Aye, now be a good lad and close the drapes over those windows now, Victor almost choked on his laughter. Lad, I am a solid decade older than you. Yet you argue with me like a little boy, so hurry along now, lad. Her smile looked sweet as her flowers in the box outside of the window. If Victor wagered a guess, he would say as fragile as them too. He dashed to draw the curtains close and make sure the door was locked. Soon, the only light in the home came from the fire pit. When he was finished, he found Mrs. Fortisky close behind him. The light of the fire was flickering, casting strange shadows on her face. Did you receive this message from the ladyship and the general themselves? Or did it get passed along to you from another messenger? Victor's breath caught in his throat. I met with them myself. They came to my home, asked me for help. Her eyes narrowed and she tilted her head to the side. Who are you? What is your name? From where do you come? He could not help but chuckle. Ha! Ha ha! You ask a lot of questions. Could make a lad nervous with all of them. I hope I do not have to punch you again. A small smirk crept onto her face. You will not get another chance, sir, I assure you. I know to look for it now. I know I ask much, but I do not get visitors of your sort very often. What? Violent ones that hit pregnant women and flee? He teased, but then continued on with seriousness. My name is Victor Tomes. I come from the other side of Aramorelli. She squinted up at him, blinking in repetition, her eyebrows scrunched together. That name sounds familiar. Perhaps we talked about you in the meetings we had with an Argentin that came and visited our village. Most in the village had nothing whatsoever to do with him, this kind Argentine. Our local priest hunted him without relenting, but to no avail. I am sure that we discussed your name. I tried to remember every name that he spoke of in case we ever needed help, but cannot recall the context. But I will not press you for information. I know I ask too much, and in truth, I need not know. Now, from the other side of Aramorelli, you say? Of what parts? The western side, near Karajarian's border, Victor replied, referring to the land of outlaws to the west of Aramorelli. It stretched from Aramorelli all the way down to the Brisian Ocean. No one lived there but bandits and outlaws, those that lived as outcasts. But none there chose to live in peace. In recent years, people now believe the worst of Argenta due to the ancient ones. And so, good folks began to flee to Karajarian, thinking it safer and better than Argenta. A lawless land seemed better than one filled with monsters. Mrs. Fortisky lifted her eyebrows. Not near Hynafol Castle, are you? We talked in depth about that wondrous place in our meetings. Our teacher from Argenta had never been there, but knew much about it and wanted to visit sometime. I wish to see it myself someday, as I hope to visit beloved Argenta one day as well. Have you been? Is it as incredible as they say? Victor chuckled. Hynafol Castle is where I live. It is my home. I am the master of those grounds, if you can believe it. You are joking! I will not accuse you of lying to me, of course, but my goodness, the master of Hynafol Castle in my sorry excuse for a house, and punched me too. He did. Well, well, well. This message must be much more exciting than I had anticipated. Her ladyship and the general and good Heraclius, too, I should expect, have had their hands in many pots, if not all of them, I dare say. But to ask the master of Hynafol Castle to take a trip to deliver it to me, oh, it must be of vital importance indeed. No wonder I recognize your name. Oh, and a handsome name at that. Why, you are shorter than I would have expected for such a fine, brave hero, but I suppose that is the way of Agenta and Heraclius. An unlikely hero fits best. Yes, I can see it, even if they do hit pregnant women and try to run away like a coward. Mrs. Vertisky rambled on, laughing and laughing. Yes, yes, laugh all you want. Now here is your letter. Do you want it or not? Victor pulled out the envelope from his coat pocket. Yes, yes. Well, here, first, she grabbed the bowl she had set out for him, going over to the fire pit and ladling a stew into it with a deep wooden spoon. As she uncovered the stew, a smell of tomato, sizzling pork, and fresh bread danced into the air. She walked the dish back over to the table, setting it down and gesturing for him to take a seat. She then took the letter from him, sitting opposite of him across the small round table. She began to tear into the cream-colored envelope as a child might. Victor smiled to himself as he sniffed the stew and gathered a spoonful. What kind of stew is this? He questioned, putting his first bite into his mouth. It filled his mouth with everything he had smelled and more. The distinct taste of rosemary made his taste buds dance. Silence fell as Mrs. Vertisky devoured the letter like he began to devour the stew. Soon, he scraped the bottom of the bowl for any leftovers. He loved it. The perfect bacon, the soft dumplings filled with onions and rosemary. Everything. When he looked up at the woman across from him, shock and worry coursed through him when he saw tears streaming down her cheeks as she cried in silence. Mrs. Vertisky, is anything the matter? She dragged her head up to look at him, letting her hand that held the letter drop. She looked at him with bleary eyes, her mind clearly straying from the present time. I thought it would be about my husband, you see. But it is not. He went off to join the cause. He went to make a home for us in Agenta. But Lady Weber makes no mention of it. She makes no mention of him at all. To speak of the future, I do not wish to hear of it. Only to discuss the present. Where is my husband now? What has happened to him? Is it all secure and ready? Yet I hear not a word on it. Not one single one. She smashed her fists into her eyes. Her heartfelt sobs made Victor's eyes mist over. The paper crinkled, still clutched tight within her grasp. I do not want to be alone. I cannot have it, for I am so scared of being alone. She slid the paper through her fingers, its edge catching her skin and breaking it. Her crying became more severe as blood began to seep from the fresh wound. Victor jumped up when he saw the blood, going into her kitchen to find something to care for it. He found an old towel, or at least what appeared to him like an old towel. People in these villages had to use everything until there was nothing left to use. He ran back over to her, taking her hand to care for it. She jumped in her skin as if she had forgotten about him entirely. He applied pressure with the worn-out cloth, careful that the paper did not get stained red. As he sat, the crinkled white paper on the table before her, he made an effort not to read it. He did not know if he wanted to, if it broke her heart as it did. He endured enough heartache to recognize her misery and relate to it. So he sat in silence as she cried, her eyes fixed on an abstract point in the room. Clearly, she dealt with the burden of thoughts that had transfixed her captive mind. He comforted her as she cried, not saying anything, but just remaining present and kind. He did not feel awkward, so closely did he know and understand pain, as he sat and held on to her wounded hand, the towel between them. He dared not leave her, not with her mental state being like a daisy pounded by the pouring rain. He could not cover her from the rain, nor would he, if he had the choice. Growth and life require the harsh rains to grow strong from adversity. But he could sit by her while she took the beating. He could be her understanding companion. He could be much like the rosemary, a hardy plant next to her, showing her that there is a future on the other side of the rain. And so he did. You know, I have a son named Thomas. Victor took a deep breath as he readied himself for the upcoming vulnerability. He looked at Mrs. Fortescue, only to see that he had instantly garnered her attention. It has been several cycles since he left me. Victor paused to rub his temple with his thumb and forefinger. We had been arguing, you see. He did not understand how dangerous the world is, how easily a Fingalbaddy like me or like him could be captured and executed. Just like that. Victor snapped his fingers. I did not want to break his heart by telling him how deformed his arm is, or how clear it is that he is somewhat mentally handicapped. I did not want to burst his bubble that everything in life is happy and grand. I did not want to destroy his innocence, you see. This backfired, as I could not give him the proof he asked for in regards to the dangers I spoke to him about that resided just outside our castle doors. I forbid him to leave, but what could I do? Lock him in his room? He packed his things and slid out in the early morning. There have been very few other times in my life I have felt so helpless, so defeated. He left, just like that, leaving me behind like I no longer mattered, throwing my wisdom away like it was trash. I am heartbroken, and so I sit around and do nothing. I wait for him to return, but he never does. I wait for my loneliness to break, but I only sink into it deeper. And just like that, I woke up one day realizing that I had been moping around my castle for cycles, no longer feeling like I had a purpose in life. I understand a little how you must feel, Mrs. Fortescue. Loved ones walking away from us is a different kind of grief, a sensation of abandonment and loss, of unworthiness and anger. We question ourselves. We question the future. We question all of our relationships. If this person will leave, what is keeping others from doing the same? But that is just the thing. Nothing is certain. Yes, we must not take our loved ones for granted. I have realized this now. But we also must not take ourselves for granted, nor let anyone else do so. We are worth staying around for. Our love is a treasure. I regret my choices with my son. I do. I understand I made mistakes and pushed him away to some extent. I am repentant of the sentiment I once held with him. I can only hope to have the chance to reconcile with him and tell him so. But he stays away. So I do not have such an opportunity. It burns, I must admit to you. Mrs. Fortisky blinked as she took in the information. She then sighed and shook her head. I cannot fathom what it must be like to lose your son. Is he your only child? Yes. Wow. I am sorry. Really. I hope he returns to you, as I hope my husband returns to me. I hold the same desire, Mrs. Vertisky. Only time will tell if our wishes come true.
That was a long chapter.
Yeah. Next longer.
And I want to say hi to Brandon. Hello. And then Mr. P, aka author BA Pascar. Am I saying that right? I hope I'm saying your last name right, Mr. P. And then also to Jules. Hello. And Megan. Hi. Hope you are all doing well. Maybe it was just Dino's narrating.
I don't know. Possible, though. I tried to put some feeling into it.
You did a good job. Yay! I pronounced it right, Dino. Are you so proud of me?
I'm very proud of you. Woo! Celebration!
That was such a fun one, wasn't it? Like, I feel like I was so happy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm teasing Brandon because apparently Brandon's gonna cry like a baby. So
I mean, it's hard not to when you're like trying to put a bunch of feeling into it as you're reading. I was like, if I start crying, I mean, one, this is real. Two, like, no, I don't need to cry right now. Thank you. I'm so glad. Sometimes I'm worried it doesn't translate all the way. So
you do great. This is why I want to have you on, because you're so good at this.
Eh. It's a good moral. It is.
Very good moral.
A lot of hormones going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, absolutely.
So I realized with like 6 minutes of reading left, I didn't stop to give you a turn. Which...
Oh, you're fine. Doesn't bother me.
Okay. You can start the next one if you want.
Okay. I might like do it halfway through because I'm like, oh, I'm sick of this. I don't want to read my book anymore.
You'll do great.
Okay. Want to start the next one then?
Sure. I'm game.
Okie dokie, chapter 8. As twilight spread across the sky, the carriage rolled onward down the shadowy forest road. Victor stared out at the lazy scenery that crawled past, but he did not see the world outside. Instead, he still sat with the woman in the rotting hut, at least in his mind. Lady Wayra and General Friedrich communicated so much to him by sending him on this trip. Only in hindsight could he see it. Though mysterious before, it showed itself as a clear work of genius. Pain ruled greatly in this world, inflicted by the Ancient Ones or otherwise. Death came naturally, suffering a part of life. Indeed, the Order did nothing to help it, but they did not solely cause all of the hurt in the universe. Victor had not lived in the naivety of this before his mission. In fact, he hid in his grave big castle in part because of this. But to see that many suffered alone, well, gave him a sense of purpose. If he could become a sort of comfort to a single person hurting out there, was that not enough reason to live? To leave the safety and comfort of his home? But the revelation received from this mission did not stop there. Eugentians fought a war far bigger than he thought, and it only grew in severity. He had believed that the tragedies in the small village near his home served as a good indicator of the severity of the happenings in the world. How foolish he had been! He saw only an outlying village. To think of what went on in the cities, it was a horrid thought. Victor knew Herr Carolus, General Friedrich, and Lady Weyra stood aware of it all, and still prepared to take it all on, despite the danger. They made themselves much more resourceful than Victor had guessed. Victor sighed in the hot air of the carriage. The time had come to trust, even just a little, that they could actually win this war. And now, with making a new friend, what they fought for became much more personal. He now understood their intentions. Within his encounter with Mrs. Lewinsky, he'd experienced some of the same feelings that his friends had experienced. They had for him. In the short time he had with her, he grew to care for her. Not in a romantic sense, but in the way a human cares for another human. They held no expectations between them. He had focused on caring for her in that present moment alone. Yet now that he no longer abided in her presence, the feelings lingered in his heart in this present moment. He felt as though it would never fade away. It may not take the forefront of his mind in the future, but he knew it would still remain. Victor believed it was so remarkable that so much could happen with one's emotions in such a small amount of time. Although a stranger before, she could never take that title now. They may see each other again if destiny or Lady Weyra should orchestrate it, but Victor sensed it would not occur. Perhaps the purpose of this mission lay in reminding him that he had a heart after all. It proved one still capable of caring without expectation of a return, and perhaps, furthermore, it showed him how glorious and good that felt, the best kind of care of all, the purest and truest. He considered her letter and how distraught she had appeared over it. He did not read it. He refused, although he could have. He gathered from what she cried over that the content had not made her rail, but rather what it did not say. He considered the concept of expectations and the destruction they can cause. Victor considered that the letter could have brought her quite good news, or perhaps a new mission to embark on. But because she had something locked in her mind, if it did not say it, what the letter said did not matter. He could have been the courier of the best news, but since it did not contain what she had desired, she found it horrid. How emotional was she? And yet, he considered, how had he been acting any different? He sat in his castle all alone, as if it was his punishment, the very worst thing in the world. He pouted and cried and refused help. He screamed and ranted and barely agreed to assist Lady Weyra and General Friedrich, despite them being kind friends that needed his help. All because had all because things had not gone the way he had planned and wanted them to go. How dreadful was his silliness! He had acted like a child throwing a tantrum. Pride has a way of demanding stubbornness from its captive. Too long had he lived in his fantasies. Too long had they seemed more suitable than taking action. His fantasies may seem a better life than reality. That chance always remained. But still, Victor decided, the make-believe did not hold the merit of his thoughts any longer. Instead, he would dream again, this time also fashion his reality after his dreams. You see, dreams have many similarities to routines and plans. Great to go by, but horrid if you stomp your foot down and say, things must be exactly as I planned. Then you will find yourself derailed and disillusioned. People also often make the mistake of fashioning their dreams after reality. This is utter ridiculousness, as it goes against the point of both dreaming and reality. Instead, it follows in favor of fear, the fool's friend. Worse yet, people stop dreaming altogether, a horror of giving up on life altogether. Victor found something else rather disturbing. The time, all the time that they had traveled, they had only seen one single unit of Ancient Ones. They had barely been stopped or checked. Where did the Ancient Ones hide? Victor feared the answer. They had told him when they visited him, but he had been too scared to believe it. Weira and Friedrich had made it clear. He had returned, and the Ancient Ones kept busy catering to him, like bees swarming around the queen. Victor had blown it off as nonsense, too consumed with his own self-pity to take notice. Then his friend spoke the truth. Bruckheimer Drogs had returned to Hymeren, which must account for the absence of all the Ancient Ones. They made themselves busy doting on him and making everything perfect for their precious chosen one. It should not have shocked Victor as it did. He had known it would happen in time. Bruckheimer could not stay away, nor would he want to. But where the chosen one had lurked up until now was a question that had haunted Victor for decades. He had hunted Bruckheimer Drogs down for years, racing off after the slightest of leads, only to discover yet another dead end. Whispers abounded for some time, and then nothing. No rumors, no traces of him. He had vanished. The priests and priestesses viewed the chosen ones as the greatest of heroes. Melegus, the god of the Ancient Ones, handpicked each one carefully, or so they say, hence the title. The followers saw them as saints, like the fingerprint of Melegus himself. From their perspective, they had reached perfection in almost every way. Attractive, brave, intelligent, not an ounce of fat on them. The most ideal role models one could create. Melegus put them forth as idols for people to worship and attempt to mold themselves into. They became a dream any young person would want to try to become. And yet, heartache abounds where such strict ideals are demanded. They chose Bruckheimer Drogs when Victor was only a boy. He could still hear the cheers from the people, all excited to have a new chosen one. How bright the future seemed then. There had not been a chosen one in a lifetime or so. Everyone overflowed with joy and took it as a good omen. But around 5 years later, Bruckheimer vanished. The Ancient Ones announced he had left on Melegus's orders. No one knew where to or why, or when he would return. Victor knew his possibly only opportunity had arrived to put down the chosen one for good before he returned and wrecked more lives. The era that Bruckheimer reigned over most of Hymern was viewed as in a golden age. Many discussed it as a glorious time where nothing bad happened. All was well and happy, and everyone made great strides towards perfection. Bruckheimer was talked about as if he were a god himself, although none could give a reason why they thought that. Nor could they give an example of how he resembled a god. other than the fact that he fulfilled the role of a chosen one. Victor sighed again. The sounds echoed in the small, enclosed carriage. There was a time he considered himself somewhat of a chosen one, hunter of sorts. Several years into Bruckheimer's reign, he elected another chosen one, Kennerly Trimachellion. Victor had proven rather successful in removing her from the picture. For some reason, Bruckheimer chose to remove himself from the picture. This disturbed Victor, but the chosen one's return bothered him more. Why now? Bruckheimer, the most important one to catch, seemed to be the only one that remained able to evade Victor, and that made him enemy number one. Where had he disappeared to all these years? What nefarious acts could he have perpetrated? The questions buzzed around Victor's mind like flies swarming a dead carcass, and it infuriated him to continually fall one step behind his enemy. When Victor arrived back at Hynafol, he went up to his room at once. He had left behind a tired Bordeaux, who muttered about fixing dinner. Once Victor reached his private sanctuary, he dumped his clothes from his bag and began to pack a new one. It made him feel more secure, having it around in case of an emergency occurring. He sensed something, like one's hair might sense, standing on end right before you get hit by lightning. He felt that something lay in wait, ready to explode and disrupt his tame life. This sense, and the action that ensued out of it, resulted from wisdom, gifted to Victor for such a time as this. His steps felt lighter as he made his way downstairs, knowing he had prepared himself. As he stepped off the last stair, Alexander took notice of him, from his boat in the living room. The Jutas rose from his bed and trotted over, his footsteps shaking the whole room. Alexander pounced on Victor, tackling him to the ground as he rubbed all over his friend, causing Holmes to laugh. Okay, it is good to see you too, Alexander. You big lug. Missed me, I see. Not used to me leaving, are you? Well, better not take me for granted then, fluffball. After several more minutes of what Alexander thought of as snuggling and what Victor called affectionate abuse, Hynafol's caretaker finally pushed the Jutas off of him and stood back up, brushing off the clumps of hair that had clung to his clothing. Do not start again. He pointed a finger at the lion moth, who gave a whiny huff in response. No. Chef Bordeaux needs me. I'm going to help him make dinner, and I cannot do that if I'm on the ground being mauled by you. Alexander made a protesting moan in response, but stopped when Victor gave him a firm look. Victor then returned to his journey to the kitchens, making a sharp turn to the left once he passed the 3 chairs that his meeting with Friedrich and Weyra had taken place at. He understood Weyra's pain better now, why she argued against an apathetically blind trust. Such careless prudence held no honor. How could it? How could it grasp the respect of friendship if it did not bother to understand the cost of such a trust? No, she wanted Victor to see and know the full extent of the truth, but choose to trust her still, fully knowing the risks entailed. As Victor approached, the sounds of sizzling food, the clanking of pans, as well as a someone vacuuming, Dino?
I'm not vacuuming. I didn't realize you can hear that. Sorry.
Once he made it to the kitchen, he stood in the doorway, observing the great big chef of a bear doing what he loved. His old friend seemed tired. His movements seemed sluggish. His usual cheerful tunes felt strained. Bordeaux dragged his arms to work as though he swam in molasses. Still he hummed, though it seemed to take some effort to do so. He remained in good spirits at all costs, which today looked like giving energy he did not have. Bordeaux paused to wipe his brow, letting loose a sigh. Victor stepped forward into the room, taking the knife from Bordeaux's big paws with a gentle pull. Victor hooked a chair with his ankle, pulling it out from the wooden table. He gestured for his friend to sit, and Bordeaux gave a small smile that reached his drooping red eyes. With a nod of appreciation, the bear turned and heaved himself into the seat, sighing. Laying his head back and closing his eyes, his body lost all tension. Victor had just finished chopping all of the onions for the night's meal when Bordeaux began to snore. Victor chuckled to himself as he began seasoning the meat for the dish, 4 chicken breasts. The choice of kindness seeps into your being once more, Victor Tomes. The knife almost slipped from Victor's hands, nearly flying toward the source of the voice. Victor choked on air at the sight of Weira, who sat in the chair opposite of the still sleeping Bordeaux. Gulping down deep breaths, Victor worked at calming himself. After some time, he frowned, making a mental note not to rely on the chef for any help if something invaded the castle in the night. Fancy way of saying, good job at trying to be a decent human being, Victor. I see some improvement. Victor rolled his eyes, turning to put the chicken into a skillet in the wood stove. Elegance is something no one should apologize for, unless it is done with a proud heart. Victor could feel her eyebrows raise with a smirk on her lips. Do you feel I outclass you, Sir Tomes, the classiest of fellows? Ha! So you think yourself both elegant and humorous. But let me guess, you will say something like, there is pride, dearest Victor, and then there is confidence. Elegance is humility with a secured style, or something of the sort. Weaver laughed at that, which made Victor smile. He loved the sound of her expressing her cheerfulness, a most pleasant sound to hear. I quite like that, I do. Perhaps you could give it to me to use? I am asked such a question time and time again. Your response is so delightful, though you mock me. Victor turned, his eyebrow raised. I did not mean to offend. Nay, friend. Weira gave a wave of her hand, clearing any bad air near to her. You jest, not offend. This is the way of comrades, such as we are, even if you are frightened to admit it. Weira's eyes twinkled like fairy lights. I assume, knowing you as you are, you wish to know my purpose here. Of course, but I was going to let you get to it your own way, knowing how you are. If I press, I would only delay you informing me all the more. Best to let you go about it in your own time, lest I encourage you to submit me to your stubborn humor. Victor returned the hot skillet, now filled with the chicken, onions, other vegetables, all lathered in butter. He placed it into the smoking oven, the smell of apple wood and herbs swirling into the kitchen's air. Ah, how you have learned me already. I thank you for not being too stubborn in return. Would not want to turn you into a mule. Well, more than you already are. Victor scoffed at this, but a grin played on his face as he sat next to the slumbering bear at the table. Now, down to business, my friend. Do you think yourself a man of legacy? Victor furrowed his brows. I pray this is not a trick question. I have no simple answer. If that is what you wish, then I am sad to say I will disappoint. To be honest, the only reply I can conceive is that you know me better than I seem to know myself. I doubt my potential at every turn. I question my own goodness with every breath. And furthermore, I am a simple man. I cannot comprehend what legacy is, not to mention what it would be like to be a person of one. No legacy was left behind me. I have never experienced one firsthand. So tell me, what is this mysterious conundrum? It must pertain to me since you bring it forth in conversation to me. Is it so I might achieve it, or at least understand how to? Wisdom speaks through you when you acknowledge that you what you do not know and do not put on airs before me. I am honored by your transparency. The humility of ignorance will take you far, Victor, if you only let it. Otherwise, if you think you know it all, will you not think it pointless to enter into the library of life? Only there will you find the solutions you need. Never stop seeking out. This is my advice to you. As you answered with such wisdom and humility, I will not skirt around your question. I am urged to reply in earnest. Legacy is the keeper of one's dreams, keeping them afloat far beyond the thin veil of death. They are passed down through the generations, each child of wisdom taking on the mantle of the dream. They craft it until it has become a crown to wear, passing it on to the next young one. Legacy is the one that takes the duty from the previous generation, only to turn it into a crown to wear. It is not enough to only gift the mantle, but to help the new wearer don the crown as well. Legacy is inspired by passion. It is poisoned by apathy. It is enraged by selfishness. Each child of wisdom must overcome the urge to try and be the one to fulfill the mantle altogether. Each will desire to complete it so that it need not be passed on. Lady Legacy cannot fit the mantle around her newest prodigy if their shoulders are too wide. So they must not try and carry the whole world and the mantle's purpose on their shoulders alone. Instead, they must shrink back into what they can carry in their time. They should not measure their worth based on the size or weight of the mantle, but in the excellence of their completed journey. Part of this is preparing the way for those who are to come after them. Your parents, although good people indeed, were set on survival, so much that they overlooked the great tapestry that destiny weaves. It artfully connects past, present, and future generations until they are a whole, one art piece that stands far above any other. Your parents thought small, only of their tiny snapshot of life and not of the whole of time. Legacy is the tapestry. She's the opportunity to make all people matter. She yearns to waste not a single life, if only people choose to be joined and woven in. Even though your parents neglected her, legacy honors them still. Their hope of legacy lives on in you. This hope could be carried onward through the generations if only you so choose. Weave yourself into the fabric of legacy's heart. But how do I do this? My son has gone away from me. He does not want to even speak to me, not to mention learn from my life's experience. I have no other children. How do I pass on to those in the future? You should worry not about the how, my friend. To ask why is to ask for wisdom, but to ask how speaks of a lack of trust and faith. I allow you to have your plans as they are, but do know that they are subject to change. However, I speak of the future things, which have not yet come to pass, so they are currently irrelevant. For the present, my friend, what is important to speak of is putting on of your mantle. You shy away from the war that is stirring because you feel you cannot bear the weight of it all. But your mantle calls you. She asks not for you to shoulder all of it in its entirety, but to carry your share of it. And so, I ask, will you come and fulfill your purpose? Will you grasp at foolishness, trying to fulfill it all? Are you actually going to concern yourself with the passing of the mantle down to the next, when you have not fully donned it yourself? Will you be so consumed with the how, giving in to the fear it tempts you with, that you lose sight of the why? Tell me, my friend, so I will know how to move forward alongside you. And that's chapter 8.
Nice job.
Thank you.
The next one's like half that length.
Yeah.
Oh, I saw a comment somewhere where he was saying like the ability to write something in characters that are actually human deserves respect. I agree with that comment because when I read this the first time, I was like, good Scott, like these are so real and like it's you get the sense that they're like actually people that you can relate to and you see their struggles and the other, like, this is the third time I've read this little section of it. It's like I'm still learning new things. I'm still seeing, reading it, and being like, oh, I hadn't thought about it like that before, or something. It's still like it's applicable even if you read it again. There's still like something you can learn, and I like that.
Thanks. I don't know what else to say.
I don't think there is anything. That was just a very long-winded compliment.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I don't have anything to say.
Yeah, well.
Well, then, Brandon, it makes sense that I was talking about the bad guys. So.
I don't know what to say to that.
ATLA?
Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh, yes.
I've only seen a few very random and disconnected episodes, so I don't really know anything about it, but
it's on my watch list, but
why though? Why would you want to see Mule Victor? Sorry. Alexander is good. I always forget he's huge, and so when it was like he rolled out of his boat, I always forget how big he is.
He's big.
Huge. Real big. So big. I don't do you though. Do you know what you're asking for? That's all I have to say. That's all I have to say.
I don't think Brandon knows.
I doubt it.
I don't think Victor would want to see that though.
Honestly, I don't either. Nobody deserves to see that.
Alrighty, we want to do
Chapter 9.
Think of the jokes.
But
yeah.
You can do the thinking for me, and we'll start chapter 9. If you don't mind.
I don't.
Good. Chapter 9. If each of us has one monster that haunts us, one that follows you around, one that terrorizes you every single day, a snarling creature that is hungry for your failure. If each of us has such a monster, Victor Tomes's monster would find that his is the fear of not having control. To admit his ignorance of something felt difficult enough. Pleading for freedom of his ignorance nagged him even worse. Whenever he tried, he felt that monster breathing down his neck with every word he uttered. But for Weira to ask him to trust and move forward without knowing how it would unravel, it seemed impossible. Oh, excuse me, notification in the way. Yes, he understood the reason behind everything well enough, but without the how. Well, one might say that monster bit into his side, latching on and refusing to release him. He desired to comply with her way. He believed that she was for him. He could sense that she spoke the truth, as she always had in the past, but he could not form the words to cooperate with her. The monster clenched his jaw tighter. What would it feel like to find freedom from the beast? Her green eyes glowed with understanding. With a tilting of her head, she gave him her patience. He began twisting his hands, sweat perspiring all over his body like a cold cage entrapping him. His eyes darted about the room, looking everywhere but her. He became vaguely aware that his bottom lip trembled, and try as he might, he could not refuse its quaking. He could only hope that she did not notice it, though he doubted that she missed anything. You know, she said in the softest voice he had ever heard before, startling him as he feared his expectation of a rebuke. Words said in a quiet voice could be worse than a screaming rebuke. Gravity is a rather nice thing. It keeps you where you ought to be, safe on the surface of your home planet. The thing is that rather frightening was when you try to depart from where you ought to be in order to traverse where you need to go. One must fight gravity to reach the stars. It feels unnatural because, perhaps, it is. Certain things were designed for your safety, of course. But when you desire to go past what is safe, into the great lands of adventure, one must give up these things. Otherwise, they will only drag you down. But even as you throw them off, they help you and keep you safe. Because, you see, without the struggle of having to depart from them, you would not be strong enough to explore amongst the stars. The fight with gravity strengthens and teaches you what gravity's purpose is, so that you might learn from it. My dear Victor, rest assured to have control is to be kept safe. But what you must ask yourself is, do I want to be safe, or do I want to help keep others safe? They are of mutual exclusivity, you see. Victor opened his mouth, his lips straining to part as their dryness made them stick together. He stayed like that for a few moments before unleashing the grunted words. I want to help others. Good! Now you once went after Bruckheimer drugs. Will you be willing to do so again? But this time, I think it would be best to be more covert, and perhaps with a less violent intention. Maybe this time, fight him with what he hates so that he never sees it coming. He thinks flaws makes victims out of those that they infest. But if you recruit those with flaws and they are successful despite them, Bruckheimer will never see it coming, will he? He thinks this will be easy, that we will bow to him in the end because of his greatness. But we will not be so easy to dominate now, will we? Will we? Even cowards have more courage than he thinks that we have. He is back then. It is a surety. Victor's eyes filled with tears. Yes, he is, Victor, which means the stakes are all the higher, my friend. But I do not want to recruit anyone, not to mention a bunch of mangy misfits. What if Bruckheimer is right? What if they cannot be successful? Besides, who would want to defy the Ancient Ones? Most people are petrified of them. What you want is up for debate. You war with yourself, Victor. You are torn between what you wish could happen, your fantasy world, and what you want to happen in this world, the real one. Your heart is in this one, desiring to make a difference and be dissatisfied. But your tormented emotions are stuck in the past, in the plans you made in your childhood, and your logic has given up altogether. Rather typical of it, in truth. As for finding recruits, believe me, they will come. There are those, Victor, that have harsh flaws just like you, but do not have the luxury of a nice castle to hide out in. They will come to you, whether they mean to or not. They will run here due to pure desperation, fleeing for their lives as they have nowhere else to go. Now, tell me, Victor, do you have somewhere else to go? Of course you do. You have Ocenta, but you need to provide them an escape route there as well, instead of holding your safe house for only yourself. Do you not think a solution is needed? The tide is rising. Fingalbaddies will fall, thousands upon thousands into death or dead man's graveyard. Or they may fall to a worse fate yet. Self-hatred. But it can be prevented. You can provide a boat for them until they learn to swim in the raging seas of the world. I see. And how am I to train them? Victor asked as he stood, opening the door of the oven a crack to check on the dinner. There you go again, asking the how. But Victor, it is only because you doubt something. Sometimes it is me. Sometimes it is yourself. When will you be willing to understand there's a lie you are believing about one of us? Victor sighed when he saw the dinner had not quite finished cooking yet, and Chef Bourdieu gave a great snore, and Victor closed the oven door. I do not know what to think. That is more of an acceptable answer than doubt, my friend. Ignorance is a much better ally than fear. At least ignorance allows for teachability. Fear thinks it knows all. It is ready to give in to allowing the worst-case scenario to happen. Fear is a bitter enemy disguised as a friend. Fine, fine. What is my next step, then? You must be able to tell me that. Victor fell back into a chair, crossing his arms. His eyelids slid halfway closed, giving her a glare. Wayra tilted her head, one side of her lips tilting upwards. My dear, dear Victor, why do you pretend you do not already know it? A low growl came from the back of his throat, and he stood up with a huff and began to pace. Well, I cannot hide anything from you now, can I? Riddle me this, my lady. My gut is telling me this could be solved by finding something in his possession that the lack of which would bother him immensely. How am I supposed to find where he is storing some great artifact that may or may not exist? Brookhammer has been gone for decades. It would be a fair assumption that he would have it with him at all times, if it is as important as I think. May I remind you that we do not know where he is at the present time, and you expect me to know where to go? He leaned forward, clenching his jaw. She did nothing but lift her eyebrows and the ends of her mouth. Fine, fine, so it might not hurt to look, but gracious, you are asking a lot of me, you know. Wayra chuckled, rising to stand from the table. It is because I believe very much in you, Victor Tomes. I would not ask if I did not think you capable. He rolled his eyes, but said nothing, crossing his arms once more. One more thing, dearest Victor. You have gained a heart for the lovely Mrs. Vertiski. though you believe you will never see her again. But this mantle of yours draws a thin, invisible line between her and you, though you do not know how as of yet. But some day you will, and on that day all will be clear and make much sense to you. Victor's face fell as Wayra mentioned never seeing Mrs. Vertisky again, but he said nothing. He had expected this after all. She lifted her eyebrows in question, but Victor only nodded. She gave a curt nod, stepping towards him. She gave a kiss to his cheek, and then she disappeared, twirling out the door. Victor knew he could not find her in his castle now, even if he tried. Walking over to the oven, he opened it again to find the meal ready, the chicken golden, a delicious smell rising up to greet him. Pulling the food out, he got out dishes and started to serve up 2 portions. Bordeaux began to snore, pulled from his dreams. Victor scoffed and chuckled. Of course he would awake for food, but nothing else. Victor placed the food before the sleepy bear at the table. Done already? How long was I asleep? The chef asked, and Victor could do nothing but laugh, for if he did not, he feared he would snap at his friend. Long enough, and Wayra was here too. You missed quite a bit. Bordeaux jerked up in his chair. What? Here? Just now? And I slept through it? Why did you not wake me? Victor gave a slight shrug. I suspected that Wayra wanted to have a private word. I see, and she did not want to stay for dinner. Victor shook his head no. Probably did not want to taste your disastrous cooking. But what is it? Let us eat, Victor rolled his eyes, but the 2 friends laughed together, eating in companionable silence. But anxiety stirred in Victor's heart. He knew what marched toward them and feared it, try as he might not to. But fear and trust do not exist exclusively. So he decided to step forward in his belief in Wayra as well as himself, which is, of course, what having courage is all about. Doing something, despite your fear.
Yay! Well done, Dino.
Oh, thank you.
I want to know, waffles? Is this in, like, a reference to Shrek? You know how the donkey and Shrek's always like, waffles! In the morning, I'm going to make us some waffles.
I don't know that. I've never seen.
You've never seen Shrek?
Nope. I think I've seen part of it. I'm told there's multiple. Thank you.
That is not the first time that Dino has already been told that since we have begun reading my book.
I've wanted to be a voice actor for a while, but I'll take audiobook reader if they'll have me.
Yep. And that's why I asked you on here.
Come on, you did a good job. Oh, he answered, yeah.
You're scared of waffles?
I love waffles. They're like my favorite breakfast food. I don't know how, I guess.
Are you serious? Maybe it's like the squares? You don't like the look of it? Because I know some people don't like the porous looking things.
Oh, I did not know that. I hadn't considered that.
People are scared of like sponges and stuff.
Interesting.
It's actually a pretty common thing.
Huh. I'm just living under a rock. I had no idea. Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy. Well.
Wow.
You said maybe it's because of the squares, and I almost blurted out, but waffles come in circle shapes too. And then I realized, and then you started talking about the things in the middle, and I was like, never mind.
Okay, it is because of that.
Okay, well,
That's funny. They come in circles too. Oh,
so I'll just,
in a circle.
yeah, I didn't realize that's what you were talking about at first. And I was like, but the circles. Yeah. Anyway, I'll retire now. Um,
Can we read one more chapter?
yeah.
Okay,
I
I'll start and then I'll hand it off to you.
Okie dokie.
Dreaming about the future can be a tricky business. Somehow, Victor Quinn started to daydream about hosting people of need in his castle. Furthermore, he dreamed about leading a team of Finkelbaddies, showing Bruckheimer just how wrong he was. He considered how much delight he would find in helping the ones who lived as he once did as a young boy, despaired, believing he had no worth. He wanted to reveal to them the truth of their greatness. He thought of breaking people out of Dead Man's Graveyard, releasing everyone from their sentences. He considered justice and how sweet it would taste on his tongue, for all Finkelbaddies to taste it for once. Victor roamed his castle, walking nowhere in particular. Beside him, Alexander strode with a lazy gait, trying to remain next to his caretaker. They often did this together. Victor liked to pretend that he was walking his pet, but in truth, he felt that it was more of Alexander walking him. He mostly used this time to think and ponder on the state of things, like why bees scared him so much since he thought them so cute, or why sand itself is so annoying. In this particular instance, however, his thoughts took him to topics that did not feel as fun to dwell on. Victor knew there had to be something in the temple of Melegus in Leuven that could throw Bruckheimer off and ruin his plans. There had to be something, anything, to make it impossible for the speaking chosen one to carry on with his evil ideas. And while he could have been considering what could be, instead, he felt stuck in thinking of some excuse, some valid reason to release him from going to Leuven. But whatever could hurt the Melagus's favorite favorite would not go unprotected. In fact, Victor would bet that Bruckheimer would not be far from that island. He would never trust something with the ancient ones that could possibly be debilitating to him. As Victor wandered the halls, a strange shift in the atmosphere occurred around him. He stopped at once, looking around the corridor. An electric feeling ran up his spine, like an oncoming thunderstorm. Victor recognized this as magic entering the space. His lungs felt heavy as he breathed in a light incense, like a flower's perfume. Victor, it is time we had a conversation together. Victor turned to the owner of the voice. It sounded like strange singing, like many voices harmonizing together. It rang out as if the song of the forest lived within the voice, the roar of a river, a rushing wind. In the middle of the hallway stood a cloaked figure. The cloak looked as though light wove itself together to make the fabric. White, but it shifted in a rainbow of colors with movement. Heraclius! Victor gasped. The ruler of Ugenta themselves had come to see him? Victor thought they always sent out others to convey messages, like Weira and General Friedrich had sent him to Mrs. Vertusky. Yes, it is I. Now come, Victor. There is something I must show you. Heraclius turned and opened the door nearest to them. Victor looked at Alexander and shooed him off with his hand. The Jutas then sauntering down the hall away from them. Holmes knew every corner of his castle, so he did not have to look to know what lay inside. Clear, turquoise waters lapped against the pool's stone walls. Periwinkle lilies floated on the surface, dancing across the top of the water. A skylight streamed light into the room, brightening its otherwise dark interior. The light reflected off the water, making strange rainbows leap onto the surrounding walls. Victor rarely had use for this room, which he thought odd, since most rooms had a rather obvious practicality for him in Bordeaux. Despite this, it did not transform as other rooms did, but remained as it always had since the incident. As Victor stepped into the room, the flower scent consumed him. Their smell brought back memories. A small pink vial filled to the brim. The smell of the liquid inside had been fragrant. The smell of the smell of the liquid inside had been fragrant, the same scent as from these blossoms. In truth, this room rather frightened him, but Victor knew it stood unlikely that he would have to admit this to Heraclius. The ghostly Hera of Eugenta probably already knew. In fact, they most likely chose this room with that in mind. Rather bothersome, this honesty thing. In they walked, the door shutting itself behind them. Victor felt like pins began poking him all over his body, his nerves throwing a fit. Carlius glided over to the left edge of the pool, facing a blank stone wall. The Hera sat down, gesturing with a cloaked arm for Victor to join them. "What does it take for someone to be merry, Victor?" Carlius asked, the quiet trickling of water the only other sound in the room. I do not know. Tell me, my lord, for mercy," responded Victor, bowing his head low in respect. "Love and acceptance." "Oh, I see," said Victor, quieting then to think. It scared him to do so, but he ventured to ask. "Are you asking me to find a way for all to be loved and accepted, so that they will be merry, my lord?" The cloak's hood flowed as the Hera shook their head no. "That is my heart's desire, but this is not your mantle. The issue is, true merriment only comes when one truly understands who they are, and then choose to love and accept themselves despite all of their flaws and weaknesses. One might say especially in regards to those. Kindness is not only to give to other people, but to ourselves as well. We must learn to be patient with ourselves if we would like to extend that same patience to others. I want you to teach as many as you can to be merry in this way, and with merriment in their heart, they will be mighty indeed." "Victor's mighty misfits, you could say," Carlos laughed, like the sound of an orchestra playing a cheery song. "Or, like my dear Waver says, mangy misfits. So Victor's merrily mighty but mangy misfits. Well, I could do no better than to have citizens like those, now could I?" Victor did not know what to say. His light-headedness heightened. It seemed as though the flower's breath grew stronger, overwhelming all of his senses. The words of the Hera growing distant. It felt like a dream, a strange one that one might have when sick with a fever. Then, in the next moment, he found himself looking up at the surface of the water, beneath the waves. He breathed just fine, as if he was still above it. The water felt cool and refreshing as it washed over him, a waterfall of peace. Then it turned boiling hot as it bathed him in the tea, as if he bathed in the tea he often drank. A lily floated just above him. He watched as it glided across the water like in a waltz. He faced its bottom, a green pad with viny roots that reached towards him like the fingers of nature. He could see the petals of the flower, but it felt like peering into a magical looking glass, the image wavering and distant. The roots mutated, turning black. The once green pad yellowed, the plant decaying. The flower then spun upside down, the purple bloom now facing him, changing to a shade of bright pink. Out of its center came the vial from his memory, pink and elegant. It flowed from the flower as though birthed from it. The bottle floated towards him, landing upside down on the bottom of the pool next to him. A soft clink muffled under the water. The vial shattered, pink liquid oozing out, polluting the water. Victor's vision clouded into a hazy magenta. He saw before him, in the cloud of pink, a picture appeared. He saw Mrs. Vertesky and a young boy with black, messy hair. The child reached for her, and Victor read his lips as he called after her. "Mama, Mama!" But she turned away from him, pulling her hand from his. She wept as she walked away, in the direction of what Victor recognized as the Ancient One's temple in her village. The picture changed, and there he could see the same boy, but older. He wore rags, but his hair was much tidier this time. He stood at the base of the same temple steps as in the last vision. With his arms crossed, he stood defiant. The fear flooded his eyes, holding him captive. A crowd of villagers surrounded him, mouths clenched shut. They seemed a somber bunch, but only showed a little less fear than the young man. On the other side of the picture, an intimidating figure paced on the temple steps. Victor could only see his back, but he recognized the robes of an ancient one swishing about him at once. The picture then changed again, of the same young man, the one Victor assumed to be Mrs. Vertesky's son. He sat in the middle of a grassy field. Rain hailed from the sky in this picture. The young man with black hair sat soaked. He had his bag next to him, and his back hunched over a notebook, shielding it from the rain. The book lay open on his lap, and the man scrunched his eyebrows in focus as he drew in it, scribbling away. It was a blueprint, skillfully designed and more detailed than Victor had ever seen before. From what Victor could tell, his work detailed an architectural design, one of a well-crafted longhouse. It had the same style as the houses in Mrs. Vertesky's village, but much better designed. His current work in progress was the outside of the edifice, the opposite page already containing a sketch of the floor plan. Water dripped from his long hair, his icy blue eyes squinting in concentration. Leather clothed him, the uniform of bandits. His brilliance was evident. Why was it being wasted on being an outlaw? This was the fate of Mrs. Vertesky's son? Victor could not believe it. He wanted to spare him from this horrid fate, obviously the point of Herr Carlos's revelation. The scene changed again. Another young man, this one Victor did not recognize, sat in a field, weeds tall and swaying around him. It was apparent he was an adult, but there was a rather boyish look about him. He had a rather long, shaggy brown hair, a round, clean-shaven face, his face enraptured with terror. He was shirtless, his abdomen rather chubby and wide. In his hand he clutched a black whip. He stared forward, fear of whatever he saw haunting his eyes. Tears streamed down his face, his bottom lip quivering. Victor could see wounds on his side, thin lines matching the whip, blood dripping from them. In his other hand he clenched a pristine white letter, beautiful calligraphy displayed across it. Victor recognized the seal on the bottom, belonging to that of an ancient one. The picture changed once more. This time he saw a girl. Long, fluffy hair was pulled into a tight bun, but hairs were sneaking out from their constraint, little frizzy curls jutting out from the proper place. This was akin to a sin for a woman in the culture cultivated by the ancient ones. But her face held an apathy that showed she no longer had the strength to care. The pouring rain fell down all around her, presumably the cause of her untidy hair, puddles of water forming in the mud around her. Her eyes held a magenta hue, a trait belonging to the people of Baitet, a country in the south of Hymiran. Her outfit was exquisite, and Victor sensed she put much time and effort into crafting it. But mud now covered it, her face dragged down with hopelessness. Brown makeup dripped from her face due to the rain, its absence revealing patches of light skin amongst her naturally dark skin. Death had already entered into her eyes. How could such a young girl be so ready to die? Flashes of many more pictures flickered before Victor, but he could only grab glimpses here and there. He always saw people, some with evident flaws, and others not so much. Some, too much to Victor's horror, were enduring torture. Others ran with all their might, some hid, many wept. These were the victims of war, a fierce and brutal one, a war on imperfect people. Victor's heart throbbed with compassion for these people, for his people. The bruised, the hurting, the outcasts, the ones left behind, the ones too ugly for the spotlight. The other ones, the ones always out of focus. They needed him, and as much as Victor did not want to admit it, he needed them too. That was what family was for.
Yay, good job.
I didn't pause, sorry.
No worries. Oh. Oh, okay.
That was chapter. We read 4 chapters.
Yeah. Yeah, in about an hour and a half.
Yeah. So
yes.
I wanted to read 4 this time because then we're on track to read 3 from now on, and we'll finish actually with just being able to do 3. So
like before the
before. Bye, Megan. Yeah. So if we kept doing 3, then we would just have like 1 chapter left over. So I wanted to do 4 just
gotcha. I'm glad somebody figured that out. I don't think I even would have thought about it. I'm gonna be honest.
So
fair enough. Fair enough.
Oh, Dinah's gonna start singing.
I'm just kidding. Although I was doing that in a meeting the other day, I didn't realize I wasn't all by myself. Weird. That's okay. I'm sure it happens to all of us. No, probably not. I'm getting head shake. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2021.
Yep. Hopefully it's better.
Good thing I came out of this year too? People are always like, "Oh, it was the worst thing ever," but there were good things in there too.
Oh, there was, for sure.
Although the terrible having to sit at our houses is probably the thing that we think about first. And
I mean, I like sitting at my house, so
I mean, there was a time where I would have said the same thing, but I've spent so much time here. It's I wouldn't say it's bad. I still do enjoy it here, but I do like little excursions out.
are they really? I mean, they are the most active volcanoes in, I think, the world. So they're almost always technically erupting
I
lava.
have no idea.
Full on erupting would be no bueno. So
Thank you. I'm glad I'm not the only one. Makes me feel better. And the only thing I do in addition to randomly singing is talking to myself wherever I am. Sometimes in the third person, and then we have conversations.
it's like you and the Duchess, just
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
oh.
Reading me right. I don't know about that. Wow. Thank you so much. I'm flattered. I just hope my reading voice is as good.
I think
Okay, well, there you go.
I say that every year. I say this every year. Two languages this year and exercise.
Here's the thing about trilingual. I'm not going to touch the exercise thing because you do that however you want to do that. I would only be able to learn one at a time. Like, are you planning on learning one in the first 6 months of the year and the second?
Brandon already speaks two.
Oh, well, there you go. That's a different thing from those of us that only speak the one.
Yeah.
If you only need to learn one more, I believe in you. What language?
Irish Gaelic.
Is that the one he can speak, or is that the one he's trying to learn?
No, that's one he can because he's
Oh.
Irish.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. And apparently you have a better voice than I do.
Wait, like singing or reading? Because I don't know if I agree with that.
Brandon just likes to pick on me. That's half of what's going on here.
That's not very.
We have an understanding.
However, you want to be friends, I guess.
It's very different than you and I's friendship.
I tell you what, I don't know. I guess I don't pick on you in that way. I'm more just sarcastic.
Yeah, you don't pick on me that much.
I'm just like sarcastic, which isn't the same thing. I don't feel.
No. Though Brandon and I are sarcastic with each other too, but
well, in addition to a hate friendly relationship.
I don't know about that, Brandon.
I'm not even gonna touch that. You do friendship however you want.
We have a teasing relationship, friendly relationship, that sometimes comes across as mean to other people, but it's really not. It's very nice.
Boy.
Unless you hate me and I just don't know about it. I don't hate you, Brandon.
Awkward.
There's worse things than being hated by Brandon, so I could be hated like you, for example.
That would be awful. I don't even know why I would do that.
I don't need it, but
well, there you go. He clarifies. It looks like it. Well, there you go. Spoken from the mouth of a babe. Please say like, oh, from the mouth of babes or babies or whatever the technical saying is. I may have applied it wrong, but I'm not redacting my statement.
From the, I think the saying you're looking for is from the mouth of the horse itself or whatever.
Maybe, but I don't redact the previous one. Anything is possible. Oh, you're keeping an assassination plot to yourself. How friendly. I also think you spelled assassination wrong, but I'm terrible at spelling, so I'm not trying to out you like that.
I think you just did.
I have no idea. I'm terrible at spelling. I would do the same thing. You should see me when I was writing a message to someone earlier and I just looked up at the sky and I was like, these are the moments where it would be good to know how to spell things. Like I just stare into the keyboard soulfully.
Oh wow, that was really fast. Hope it was good sushi. I want sushi now.
I noticed he responded saying English spelling is weird, and I agree. I had trouble with the word. This is now that we were talking about babes, and now we're on to the word beautiful, but I had trouble spelling the word beautiful for a really long time because of the BEAU thing. I didn't realize there was that many vowels crammed into one word, all in order.
Yep.
Woo! So, glad I'm not the only one staring at my keyboard and wishing I knew how to spell. I would agree.
It's good.
That was very fast.
It was fast.
I ate my lunch about that fast today.
Yeah. That's what you were saying.
Yeah, I just like whoosh, and then it was all the way. Anyway. Yeah, you're not wrong. I wish I could say you were wrong, but you're not.
I think you mean spell. You even spelled spell wrong.
To be honest, that adds to it though. Like I appreciate that.
Try seaweed. I have tried seaweed.
So have I.
It's very good. I like it. I like it.
I've always felt it was very salty.
Yeah, but I like salty stuff, so.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I'm not like opposed to it, but it's not my favorite thing. Yes.
Give me 1 second.
I agree with the banana thing.
Wasabi.
Oh, that sounds spicy. This is the comment which I agree.
I agree with this. Yes.
Wholeheartedly.
Also relate.
I always ended up with too few. While we're on the topic, it's always like BANA.
Well,
or something like
Bana. I could still figure out what that was, but.
The other word I've never figured, that's the one I was laughing at. Oh, I know what I was gonna say. It was more about the inability to spell, because I always find myself like, I'll be writing something or get into something, and then I'm like writing, and then I go to spell the word of, and I'll like write out on the paper OVE, and then look at it after I'm done writing and be like, wait, that's not how you spell that. But in my head, because I learned to spell and I'm really, really leaned into, and I still do, like count math on my fingers, I still sound things out when I don't know what I'm doing. I've never broken away from that because that's how I learned. And so it's like OVE. I think you can follow how that would sound like that. And so I always get stuck in that little hole. That's why I'm not very good at spelling the word pencil, because there's a C in there that I never remember.
Oh.
And the combination of the IE. I did that for a while, but I always remembered the A. It was like the E I would get rid of. Weird word.
It is a weird word. I remember having issues with it too.
It's up there with all the other like French words we just took from the French that are hard to spell.
Yeah.
Colonel and lieutenant, not first among them. Not that those are French, but I hate spelling them and I can't. So I always look it up. Luckily, I have few reasons to write those words, or spell them, or type them.
Yep, it's true.
Yes!
That's
Yes! So do I! That's actually how I sound it out in my head. I sound it out in my head as beautiful. Otherwise, I never remember.
Yep, that's smart. We have issues with our English spelling, so
Yeah, I do.
it
I'm
has
not.
some exceptions too.
So many. I'm terrible at spelling.
I mean, practicing and writing has helped me a lot. Plus spell check.
But
But
yeah, I'm leaning onto that hard.
yes, I still have difficulty with this one when I'm writing by hand.
Difficulty always. Always, always, always.
And Jules is a teacher.
Oh, well, if that doesn't speak to how universally hard that is to spell, I don't know what does.
Mm-hmm.
I 100%. Colonel. I love that. That's the best thing I've seen all day.
Hey, what about my face?
Your face is beautiful too. Oh my goodness.
And then, Brandon's just.
You want to tell us what that means?
I regularly have to go to Google Translate and try to.
I don't. Well,
But I don't know if I feel like it right now.
I
So just
definitely.
and then.
Fair enough. Fair enough. With all the random words like that you run across in life, I should probably just have Google Translate open all the time, but I don't.
Yeah, especially since you and I have beautiful bilingual friends that will just like.
Yes. Yes. It kills me.
Yeah. But I don't think we have any other friends other than Brandon that speaks Gaelic.
No. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. Which likely means the answer is no.
Okay. So, there we go.
Ah!
Okay. Not speak English. And that's
So I speak no English.
basically.
That's how
I don't speak English.
I do not speak English. English not I speak.
None are wrong.
No.
I mean, really, just point across.
Some of them just sound a little less sophisticated than others.
Little caveman-ish.
A little bit. I don't know why I sounded so excited about it too. Hey, I got it. That's exciting.
You do.
But what if I didn't and this is all just a hologram? Like a pre-recording of another human's voice that's able to adapt very, very well to the present circumstances. Or they're coming out with these things that you can do or have that you can like wear in your ear that'll like translate other languages you can hear to you in your ear. Cool.
Ooh.
I don't know where I was going with that because the train left the station, but basically this could all be fake.
Robotic.
You can't even see my face. How would you even know?
Well, I've seen your face, so.
Well, you don't. I mean, there are things we keep to ourselves. never heard of a word mutating before, and I have so many questions, and I don't know if I want any of them answered, but I still have them anyway.
So under certain circumstances, words change. It's interesting.
Oh, like change how though?
Is it kind of like how in like certain like of the Romance languages, like French, they if you put certain there's the feminine and masculine words, and if you do it of like the opposite, it means something different.
He's throwing more words.
Okay. It literally is just letters to us, just for the record.
What?
Like that's just letters to us. Like we don't know anything. So
Oh yes, just letters. I kept hearing you say it's just ladders, and I was like, no, no, those aren't ladders, Abby. I don't want.
okay.
So is ye or like a prefix?
Yeah.
Or,
How does it change it? I hate having to wait the delay.
I would be surprised if you didn't have genders, because
Yeah.
language I've ever heard of does.
Well, no, Brandon means more like with French, like with the Romance languages. I
Yeah.
think what Brandon's talking about. Like, no, it'll be like book will have you spell it a certain way for feminine and a certain way for masculine.
Yeah. Latin has like different like feminine endings for words and masculine endings for words and neuter endings for words.
Right. Okay.
So throwing more letters at it becomes
Okay.
does that change the meaning? Oh, they're important in Latin.
They are important in Latin and all the languages that derive from it. So
Yeah. I was like, that's foreign to me. Is the language or the gender of a word not being like because in Latin, I believe adjectives that modify nouns are designed so they can use all three of the endings to match with the noun in question. Yeah. Which can be confusing if you're looking for it in the dictionary and it's got an ending you're not familiar with. And then the next thing you know, you're confused and lost, and language isn't really your thing. So you're just kind of staring at it, wishing it would go away.
Aw.
Yeah.
But I know there's a lot of people that are learning it and really like it. So hopefully it doesn't go extinct.
The fact that you say it's complicated to foreigners makes me wonder if you're not a foreigner or if you just learned it for fun.
Brandon, is Gaelic your first language, or have you just learned it growing up there?
He grew up over there? I didn't know that.
He's Irish.
Aha! You tell me something I didn't know. Different grammatical forms of normal words and very specific words. Interesting. This language is like none other. Oh, there you go.
Okay.
So I assume that would mean you grew up speaking both.
Grew up speaking both, but Gaelic is the first.
Gaelic is his first language.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it is actually.
Because I know even a lot of Irish people nowadays don't speak it, right? I mean, they just speak English. Is that correct?
I was watching. He can answer like officially. But I was watching this Irish YouTuber at one point, and she does videos to see if like Irish people still know, and some of them do, and some of them don't. But he can tell you for sure, I'm sure. Unless he's like, nah, go Google it, I don't know. But we'll find out.
Typically, Brandon likes talking about this. So.
Oh, okay, well, there you go. The only places the language is spoken is in wherever that is. I'm not even gonna pretend to know. I can kind of pretend with Abby's words in the book because that's fake, but I'm not gonna try and pretend with. And because I've read it enough times, I have an idea of how I think it is pronounced.
And that's perfect.
So he does say some do and some don't. So there you go. The more you know.
The more you know.
Well, for sure. Exactly like that. That's 100% what I was doing.
Mm-hmm. I just had to do it since you can't be on camera. I had to, do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool. Thank you. I will look at that once I'm done here.
Huh. They just kick you out if
Just yeet.
like goodbye, please leave. You don't speak Gaelic. Wow. That seems like tough treatment. But I mean, whatever your local town wants, I won't stop you. We're all expected to know English to some degree here, I feel like.
I mean, I feel like it would be okay if you did it like like any other foreign country, kind of. Like if I'm going to Mexico, I'm expecting to be surrounded by Spanish, And
Yeah.
so if I go to somewhere and try to see if they speak English and they either don't or whatever, they're not going to kick me out. But
No.
if they do speak English or some English, hopefully they would try to cooperate, but then not expect everybody else to be speaking English, like be
Yeah.
comfortable with the fact that another language is being spoken around me, and that's the main one. So
I mean, it depends like how much of a tourist location they are and if they're advertising for English speaking people to come, because if they're not, I highly doubt you're actually going to find them. He
okay,
heard them through oral tradition.
that sounds fun.
Oral tradition is pretty cool.
It's pretty awesome. I love that it's still happening and important in other places in the world and other cultures. Okay, that
Well,
makes more sense.
yeah, and you're just like turned away if you can't. If you're like, I just won't speak while I'm here. Can I come in, please?
Out, just hand motion.
Sign language?
They kick you out if you speak bad.
Ooh, that's a good question.
Like if someone who's trying to learn wants to go to immerse themselves to learn it better, are they going to be like, nope?
Like, sorry, go
Yeah,
away.
that makes sense. They want to preserve it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. That's what I said. That's exactly what I said. 100% exactly what I said. Just don't say anything. Be like charades the whole time you're there.
Okay, so they're not really even that snobbish or anything. Just trying to protect the language. That's it.
Sounds like it.
That makes sense. And then it kind of almost becomes a attraction for people who are trying to learn and want to learn and are learning. So then that makes sense.
Especially if they're like willing to work with you if you want to learn it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? And they understand that like you can't speak it yet, but they want to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh. Oh my goodness, it's 4 o'clock.
Yeah,
And 2 hours go by.
it did.
That amazes me.
Time just flew.
I know. I don't know how it does that.
I don't know either. That was fun.
It
Thanks
was.
for joining me, Dino.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And I think, can we do next week?
Most likely.
Okay.
I should be available.
So we'll probably be back sometime next week. And
Woo.
yeah, probably. I mean, I kind of like the afternoon thing too because then Brandon can join us. Because if we do it in the evening for us, Dino, it's like in the middle of the night for Brandon.
Oh,
So
does he actually live in?
yeah,
Aha! Okay, I didn't know that. Well, this makes it so it's still kind of ish daytime. I think it's still like kind of daytime. It's not really the daytime. It's like,
it's like evening
yeah,
for Brandon, I think. So.
that's why I went with kind of daytime. I wasn't really sure.
Waking hours.
Yeah, yeah. I'm comforted. I don't know if we're still discussing this, but really fast. I'm comforted by the fact that if you're learning, you're allowed to speak 2 languages.
Yes, me too.
That makes me feel a little better about just like the whole situation.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Alrighty. Well, I think that's going to be us all for today. And we'll probably, hopefully, see you next week. I will be putting out the announcements and whatnot as soon as I have the details. So,
as fast as we know.
Yeah. And until then, guys, bye.